Hey, this is for you, Mark Aronson, who responded to me on Facebook. First of all, this is the way that I communicate through my network. Mark Zuckerberg has his network. I don't have time to spend my days writing free content for Mark, okay? I would prefer to do what I commonly do, which is monetize my media content. I commentate. Therefore, you're asking me a question, this is what you get. You're wrong. And also, A, B, we're not Facebook friends. C, you're white. And because of that, you come with a sense of the world that's completely different from someone who's black, who's had the experience that Derreck Johnson has had, or myself, or somebody else. Note, if you read my piece, you realize I support Rebecca Kaplan for at-large and not Mr. Johnson. But that did not stop me from coming to Mr. Johnson's defense, because what I saw, just the headline, was racist. Just because a person files for bankruptcy doesn't mean their business was not successful. Also, a number of people who I went to school at the Skyline, who are older than Derreck, who are white, have said to me that they remember his restaurant and how proud he was to be a fifth-generation Oaklander running the restaurant and employing former black prisoners. The bottom line is he did that, okay? He did that. Also, another friend of mine, I'm not leaving these names out, I was about to blurt them out, but some don't mind that, others do. But another friend of mine wrote me and said that prior to this whole brouhaha, that person wrote regarding the business and Derreck, and to get to more about him, and said that he wasn't operating the business, he was a founder. Point is, there was every effort made on the part of the campaign to say he was the founder of the business, but not that he was currently operating the business, okay? But what I go back to is this: I don't give a fuck. The story there in the middle of this really is this kind of ideological war between people who understand racism in all of its forms, including institutional, and people who don't, all right? In the middle of this, that publication and its publisher, the author of that post is not the publisher, okay, greenlit a post that sought out to insult a black person who had a business that did work simply because they filed for bankruptcy. Oh, and maybe didn't tell them or something like that. He doesn't necessarily have to. However, it could have been handled a different way. It could have been handled, hey, look, we've discovered that you went bankrupt. We didn't realize this. Can you shed some light on what happened and give us another article where you can talk about the problems of black businesses being undercapitalized and what you learned? That's positive. Instead, they chose to do it negatively. And I'm gonna tell you something else too, all right? That information didn't come from that dude doing any research. It came from another source, okay? And I know exactly who gave him that information. So all this, oh, I'm so brilliant, I figured all this out, is complete BS, all right? It was a hit piece against Derreck Johnson because he was put up there by the mayor and it was done by somebody else very close to the situation, all right? So enough of this nonsense. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark OaklandNewsNow.com. Oh, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, let me give you the 50,000-foot view is this. Derreck Johnson is a small business owner who succeeded in forming a business, a restaurant, a popular one, that employed black ex-prisoners. He has received a great deal of money. He was encouraged to run by, among other people, Kamala Harris, who is the Democratic vice presidential elect nominee. He's got a lot of uphill climbing to do. He is not familiar with municipal corporate governance, unlike the incumbent, among other things. But he has a great deal of money behind him. The incumbent, Oakland at-large councilman Rebecca Kaplan, who has been a friend of mine since 2008, is battling a kind of dislike of her that is multifaceted. It is in part because she chooses to be butch lesbian. I'm putting that out there as a fact. There are people who do have a problem with how she presents herself. Okay? They shouldn't. They should allow her to be who she wants to be, but they don't admit that they have the problem, but they do. Then there are others who don't like certain ways that she passes on information. But those two issues, in particular the latter one, all right, are small compared to the many, 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 many great things she's done in a seat that's very difficult to sort of, make your own way in. That's being the at-large, because at-large, you're essentially the second mayor. Because you are, and a lot of people don't know this, but the at-large council member is a remnant of when Oakland had a system where each council person was responsible for the whole district. In fact, when we were discussing the charter change in the early 90s, and we had the Oakland Charter Commission to discuss charter change, and that was put together by the late Richard Winnie, Alameda, who is a great attorney and mentor of mine, and now former city council member Dick Spees, all right? There was thought of having not one, but two at-large council members, okay? Two, and maybe even one more, as there was that came up for a second in time, if you will, and then it petered away. My point is that the at-large council member in a sea of district council members that have their own little areas is an outlier. And so the question is, how do you make your own stamp? You're almost like the lieutenant governor of California versus the governor, right? But even more complex than that, because in Rebecca's case, with respect to Libby, they're consistently at odds with each other, excuse me. So Libby has always ran a candidate, it seems, against Rebecca, to the point where I've started thinking of them as maturing candidates. Not fair to them, but, look, it has to do with the structure. And so that got us to where we are today, where Mr. Johnson was painted by Oaklandside in a way that I felt was racist, and I still assert that it is completely institutionally racist to present a candidate that way under those specific, unique circumstances, okay? I mean, if you don't like the candidate, just say you don't like the candidate, but don't go back and find things, okay? Because it doesn't matter how you spin it. Like, for example, I'm told, and I won't say who told me, but it's a person who's in a perfect position to know that the writer claims that the information was found on Pacer. Well, but it still begs the question, why the hell would you look for information specifically on him if it were not for a tip? Okay? All right? Because to do it the right way would be to look at the businesses of all of the candidates, all of the candidates running for at-large in this instance, or all the council members, just to make it, clean, okay? And then put that out there and say, hey, you know what, we found this and we were concerned, but then put it in a bright light. Because it is difficult for blacks to get funded to keep their businesses. And I don't care what anybody else thinks. We got to change the system. All right? And changing the system means changing approaches, and it means changing your lens. So, Mark, you need to get a new lens. See ya.